and the quiet town of Ravenswood, nestled between rolling hills and dense forests. Secrets were as common as the mist that blanketed the streets each morning. Old cobblestone paths wound through centuries-old buildings, their facades bearing the weight of countless untold stories. Elena Hartley returned to Ravenswood after 10 years away, drawn back by a letter from her childhood friend, Lila Montgomery. The letter was cryptic, filled with urgency and a plea for forgiveness. "Meet me at the old clock tower at midnight. There's something I need to confess." Elena's heart raced as she read the words. Memories of their last encounter flooded back. The argument, the tears, and the silence that followed. Lila had been her closest friend, almost like a sister, until that fateful night when everything changed. Determined to find out what was so important after all these years, Elena arrived at the clock tower just as the moon peeked behind ominous clouds. The structure loomed above her, its hands frozen at 12, just as they had been since the accident that took Lila's brother, Daniel. The air was thick with anticipation. Elena checked her watch. 12:05 a.m. Lila was late. As she waited, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it a faint melody, almost like a lullaby they used to sing as children. "Elena!" A voice called softly. She turned to see Lila emerging from the shadows, her face pale, eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Lila, what's going on?" "Your letter." It sounded urgent. Lila approached slowly, her hands clasped tightly together. "There's so much I need to tell you. Things I should have told you years ago." Elena felt a knot form in her stomach. "What do you mean?" Lila looked away, her gaze fixed on the ground. "Do you remember the night Daniel died?" Elena's breath caught. How could she forget? It was the night that shattered their world. "Of course I remember. He fell from the clock tower. They said it was an accident." Lila's voice trembled. "It wasn't an accident." Silence hung between them, heavy and suffocating. "What are you saying?" Elena whispered. Lila met her eyes, tears spilling over. "I was there, Elena. Daniel and we argued. He found out about us, about how I felt about you." Elena's mind reeled. "Us? What are you talking about?" "I was jealous," Lila confessed. "Jealous of how close you and Daniel had become. I thought he was going to take you away from me." Elena shook her head, confusion and disbelief battling within her. "Lila, Daniel and I were just friends. He loved you, Elena, and I couldn't stand it." Lila's voice broke. "We fought, and I pushed him. I didn't mean for him to fall." Elena staggered back, her eyes wide. You pushed him?" "I've lived with the guilt every day since. I wanted to tell you, but I was afraid. Afraid you'd hate me. Afraid of what would happen." Elena's world spun. The truth was more horrifying than any nightmare. "Why are you telling me this now?" Lila took a shaky breath. "Because he's back." "What do you mean he's back?" "Daniel is dead." Lila glanced over her shoulder, fear etched on her face. "His spirit, Elena. He's been haunting me, appearing in my dreams, in reflections. He's angry, and he's coming for me." Elena stared at her, unsure whether to believe her old friend or question her sanity. "Lila, you're not making any sense." A sudden chill enveloped them. The wind picked up, swirling leaves around their feet. The distant chimes of the clock tower echoed eerily, despite the hands being frozen. "Do you hear that?" Lila whispered. Elena nodded, her heart pounding. "It's just the wind." "No, it's him. He's here." The shadows around them seemed to deepen. From the darkness, a figure emerged. A tall silhouette, its features obscured. Elena's blood ran cold. "Daniel?" she breathed. The figure moved closer, and as it stepped into the pale moonlight, the face of Daniel Montgomery became clear. His eyes were dark hollows, his skin a ghastly pallor. "Lila," his voice echoed, a haunting resonance that chilled them to the bone. "You can't hide the truth forever." Lila fell to her knees. "Daniel, please. I'm sorry. I never meant for it to happen." Elena stood frozen, unable to comprehend the apparition before her. "This can't be real," she whispered. Daniel's gaze shifted to Elena. You deserve to know what she did, he said. But it's too late for apologies. The ground beneath them trembled. Shadows twisted and writhed, reaching out like tendrils. Lila screamed as darkness enveloped her, pulling her towards the abyss. Elena, help me! She cried out, her hands clawing at the air. Instinct took over. Elena rushed forward, grabbing Lila's arm. The cold was unbearable, seeping into her bones. Hold on, she shouted. Daniel watched impassively. She must pay for her betrayal. Daniel, stop this, Elena pleaded. She's sorry. Let her go. He tilted his head, a flicker of emotion crossing his spectral face. And what of my suffering? I was robbed of my life, my future. Elena's grip tightened on Lila. We can find a way to make this right. Please, Daniel. For a moment, silence. Then Daniel's form wavered. There is a way, he said slowly. A life for a life. Elena's heart sank. What do you mean? Come with me, Elena. He extended a hand. Join me in the shadows, and I'll release her. Lila's eyes widened. No. Elena, you can't. Elena looked between them, torn. Daniel, I can't. He smiled sadly. I thought you'd say that. The tendrils of darkness tightened around Lila. Her screams pierced the night as she was pulled into the void. No! Elena screamed, but it was too late. Lila vanished, the shadows swallowing her whole. Daniel began to fade. Justice has been served, he said softly. Farewell, Elena. Wait! She cried out. Don't leave me. But he was gone, leaving Elena alone beneath the cold gaze of the frozen clock tower. The wind whispered once more, carrying Daniel's final words. Beware the shadows, for they hold the truths we fear to face. The next day, Elena sought answers. She visited the Old Town archives, delving into records of folklore and hauntings. The librarian, an elderly woman with knowing eyes, approached her. You're searching for something, aren't you? The librarian asked. Elena nodded. I need to understand what happened last night. The librarian sighed. Ravenswood is a place where the veil between worlds is thin. Restless spirits linger, especially those wronged in life. Is there a way to bring someone back? Someone taken by the shadows? The librarian studied her carefully. The shadows are unforgiving. To retrieve a soul, one must offer something in return. Elena's resolve hardened. I'll do whatever it takes. Be cautious, the librarian warned. The price is often more than one is willing to pay. That night, Elena returned to the clock tower, armed with newfound knowledge and a determination to save Lila. She lit candles in a circle, reciting incantations from an old tome. The air grew still. From the darkness, a figure emerged. Not Daniel, but a cloaked entity, its face hidden. Why have you summoned me? It hissed. I seek to bargain for a soul, Elena declared, her voice steady. The entity chuckled, a sound that sent shivers down her spine. And what do you offer in exchange? Take me instead. Bring Lila back. Such nobility, it mused. But the shadows do not trade lightly. Please, Elena begged. She doesn't deserve this. And you think you do? She hesitated. If it will right the wrongs, then yes. The entity moved closer. Very well. The exchange will be made. Before she could react, tendrils of shadow wrapped around her. Pain seared through her as the darkness consumed her. At that moment, a scream echoed through the night. Lila's scream. She appeared at the edge of the circle, gasping for breath. Elena! Lila cried out, seeing her friend being enveloped by shadows. It's okay, Elena managed to say. You're free now. Lila rushed forward, but an invisible barrier halted her. No, this isn't what I wanted. The entity laughed. The bargain is struck. The shadows claim their due. As Elena vanished into the abyss, Lila fell to her knees, sobbing. Days turned into weeks. Lila wandered the town, haunted by guilt and the loss of her only friend. She sought help, but no one believed her stories of spirits and shadows. One evening, as she sat alone in her room, the lights flickered. A familiar voice whispered her name. Lila. She looked up to see Elena's reflection in the window, her eyes dark and empty. Elena. Lila stood, reaching out. You took everything from me? Elena's voice echoed coldly. Fear gripped Lila's heart. No, I tried to save you. You betrayed me, just as you did Daniel. Lila backed away. Please, I'm sorry. Elena's apparition stepped through the glass, advancing slowly. Now it's your turn to join us. Shadows filled the room, and Lila's screams were swallowed by the darkness. The disappearance of Elena Hartley shook the town of Ravenswood to its core. Rumors spread like wildfire. Whispers of old curses, vengeful spirits, and the infamous shadows that supposedly lingered around the clock tower. Lila Montgomery was nowhere to be found, and those who remembered the Montgomery family tragedy couldn't help but draw eerie parallels. Detective Marcus Hale was assigned to investigate the recent events. A pragmatic man, he didn't believe in ghosts or curses. To him, every mystery had a logical explanation. As he walked through the mist-laden streets of Ravenswood, he couldn't shake the feeling that this case was different. His first stop was the Ravenswood Public Library, a repository of the town's history and secrets. The librarian, Mrs. Evelyn Clark, was a woman of few words but possessed a wealth of knowledge about the town's lore. Detective Hale, she greeted him with a nod. What brings you to our humble archive? I'm looking into the disappearances of Elena Hartley and Lila Montgomery, he replied. I was told you might have information on the Montgomery family. Mrs. Clark's eyes flickered with something akin to apprehension. The Montgomerys have a long history in Ravenswood. Some say their lineage is entwined with the very fabric of the town's darker aspects. What do you mean by that? Hale inquired. She pulled out a dusty tome from the shelf, its leather cover worn with age. Opening it to a marked page, she revealed an old photograph of the clock tower. The clock tower has stood for centuries, a monument built by the Montgomery ancestors. Legends say it's a gateway, a place where the veil between the living and the dead is thinnest. Hale leaned in, examining the photograph. Do you believe in these legends, Mrs. Clark? She met his gaze steadily. Belief is a powerful thing, detective. Whether I believe or not is irrelevant. But many in this town do, and that belief can manifest in unpredictable ways. He sighed, rubbing his temples. Is there anyone else I can talk to? Someone who might know more about Elena and Lila. Mrs. Clark hesitated before replying. You might visit Father Gabriel at St. Mary's Church. He's well-versed in the town's spiritual matters and was close to Elena before she disappeared. Thanking her, Hale made his way to the church, its spire piercing the gray sky. Inside, the scent of burning candles and aged wood greeted him. Father Gabriel was at the altar, arranging flowers. Father Gabriel? Hale called out. The priest turned, a serene smile on his face. Yes. How can I assist you? I'm Detective Marcus Hale, investigating the recent disappearances. I was told you knew Elena Hartley. Father Gabriel's smile faded. Ah yes, a tragic situation. Elena was a devoted member of our congregation during her youth. Did she confide in you at all before she went missing? He paused, choosing his words carefully. Elena came to me seeking guidance. She was troubled by nightmares and visions. What kind of visions? She believed she was being contacted by spirits, seeking to right past wrongs. Hale raised an eyebrow. Do you think she was mentally unstable? Not at all. Elena was rational but deeply affected by the events surrounding her friend's disappearance. Do you mean Lila Montgomery? Father Gabriel nodded. They were inseparable as children. When Lila disappeared, Elena felt a profound sense of responsibility. Did she mention any plans or places she might go? Only that she intended to confront the darkness head-on, to bring Lila back. Hale's skepticism was growing, but he couldn't ignore the consistent references to supernatural elements. Thank you for your time, Father. As he left the church, Hale decided to visit the old Montgomery estate. Though abandoned for years, It stood as a silent sentinel on the outskirts of town. The mansion was a relic of bygone opulence, its windows boarded up and gates chained. Breaking the chain wasn't difficult. Inside, the air was stale, filled with dust and memories. Portraits of stern-faced ancestors lined the walls, their eyes seeming to follow him as he moved from room to room. In the study, he found a desk cluttered with papers. Among them was a journal belonging to Daniel Montgomery. Flipping through the pages, Hale read entries detailing Daniel's fascination with the occult and his belief in the power of the clock tower. One passage stood out. April 12, 1995. Lila grows more distant each day, consumed by jealousy over my friendship with Elena. I fear what she might do. The clock tower calls to me, its whispers growing louder. Perhaps there, I will find the answers I seek. Hale's mind raced. Was it possible that Daniel's death was not an accident? And if so, how were these events connected to the current disappearances? As he pondered, a floorboard creaked behind him. He spun around, but the room was empty. Shaking off the unease, he pocketed the journal and decided to leave. Outside, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the estate grounds. Hale headed back to town, unaware of the figure watching him from an upper window, the hollow-eyed apparition of Daniel Montgomery. Meanwhile, in a realm beyond the physical, Elena found herself wandering through a landscape of shadows. The ground was a mirror reflecting a starless sky, and whispers surrounded her, unintelligible yet hauntingly familiar. "Hello?" she called out, her voice echoing. From the darkness, a figure emerged. Lila, her form flickering like a dying flame. "Elena!" Lila's voice was weak, filled with despair. "Lila, thank God I found you." Elena rushed forward, embracing her friend. But Lila's body was cold, insubstantial. "I'm so sorry," Lila sobbed. "I never meant for any of this to happen." "It's okay," Elena soothed. "We need to find a way out of here." Lila shook her head. "There is no escape. This place feeds on guilt and regret. It's a prison of our own making." Elena refused to accept that. "There has to be a way. Tell me everything you know about this place." Before Lila could respond, the shadows around them coalesced into the form of Daniel. "Still trying to run, sister?" he taunted. "You can't escape justice." "Daniel, please," Elena pleaded. "Let us go." He turned his gaze to her. "You chose to be here, Elena. You offered yourself willingly. I did it to save Lila. She doesn't deserve this." "And what about me?" Daniel's voice rose, anger seeping through. "Did I deserve to die?" Lila stepped forward. "No, you didn't, and I will carry that guilt forever. But punishing us won't change the past." Daniel's expression faltered. For a moment, his eyes reflected the brother they once knew. A kind, gentle soul. "Perhaps not," he conceded. "But the shadows demand balance. A life for a life." Elena seized the opportunity. "Then let it end with us. Release us and find peace." He looked between them, conflicted. "I cannot. I am bound to this realm as much as you are." "Then let's find a way to break the cycle," Elena suggested. Together, the shadows around them writhed, displeased with the turn of events. A low growl emanated from the darkness. Daniel glanced around nervously. "They won't allow it. The entity that controls this realm feeds on our torment." "Then we need to confront it," Elena declared. Lila nodded. "We're stronger together." Reluctantly, Daniel agreed. "Very well. But be prepared. The entity is powerful and cunning." They ventured deeper into the abyss, following a path that seemed to materialize beneath their feet. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. "Turn back," they warned. "You do not belong here." Elena ignored them, her determination unwavering. After what felt like hours, they reached a vast expanse where the shadows converged into a towering figure, an embodiment of darkness itself. "Why do you trespass in my domain?" The entity's voice resonated, each word dripping with malice. "We've come to reclaim our souls," Elena stated firmly. The entity laughed. a sound that rattled their very beings. Arrogant mortals. Your souls are mine by right. By what right? Lila challenged. We were drawn here by deception. Your own actions led you here, it hissed. Guilt, betrayal, sacrifice. The perfect ingredients for my feast. Daniel stepped forward. We won't be your pawns any longer. The entity's eyes flared. You dare defy me? Elena reached out, taking Daniel and Lila's hands. We stand together. A light began to emanate from them. A soft glow that pushed back the encroaching darkness. Impossible, the entity roared. Your bonds cannot break my hold. But the light grew brighter, fueled by their unity and resolve. Memories of happier times surfaced. Their childhood adventures, shared laughter, and unbreakable friendship. The shadows recoiled, the entity's form destabilizing. No, I will not be denied. Elena focused on those memories, projecting them outward. We forgive each other, she declared. We release ourselves from guilt and blame. Lila joined in. We choose love over hatred, hope over despair. Daniel closed his eyes. We let go of the past and embrace forgiveness. The combined force of their reconciliation created a surge of energy that shattered the darkness. The entity let out a final, ear-piercing scream before disintegrating into nothingness. The abyss began to dissolve, replaced by a serene landscape bathed in warm light. The ground beneath them transformed into lush grass, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of flowers. Where are we? Lila asked, her voice filled with awe. A place of peace, Daniel replied, his features softer. We've broken free. Elena smiled, relief washing over her. We did it. Together. A path appeared before them, leading toward a distant glow. Daniel looked at his sister and Elena. It's time for me to move on. Lila's eyes welled with tears. Will we see you again? He placed a hand on her shoulder. One day, but for now you both have lives to live. Turning to Elena, he added, Thank you for helping me find peace. She nodded. Thank you for forgiving us. Daniel began to walk toward the light, his form gradually fading. Lila and Elena watched until he disappeared completely. Back in Ravenswood, Detective Hale sat in his office, sifting through his notes. The pieces didn't fit, and the logical explanations he sought eluded him. Just then, his phone rang. Detective Hale, he answered. Sir, this is Officer Reynolds. We found Lila Montgomery and Elena Hartley. He sat up straight. Where are they? They just walked into the station. They're asking to speak with you. Minutes later, Hale entered the interrogation room to find Elena and Lila seated side by side. They looked exhausted but unharmed. Miss Hartley, Miss Montgomery, he began. Can you tell me where you've been? Elena exchanged a glance with Lila before responding. It's a long story, Detective. One that you might find hard to believe. Try me, he said, folding his arms. They recounted their experiences, omitting the supernatural details, instead focusing on their emotional journey, confronting past mistakes and reconciling after years of estrangement. Hale listened intently. So, you disappeared to resolve personal matters? Yes, Lila confirmed. We needed time away to sort things out. He eyed them skeptically but decided not to press further. Well, the important thing is that you're both safe. As they left the station, the sun was setting, casting a golden hue over Ravenswood. Lila took a deep breath. It feels like a new beginning. Elena smiled. It is. We've been given a second chance. They walked through the town square, noticing subtle changes. The air seemed clearer, the atmosphere lighter. The oppressive aura that once hung over Ravenswood had lifted. Do you think anyone will believe what really happened? Lila asked. Elena shook her head. Probably not. But it's our truth, and we can carry it with us. Just then, they spotted Mrs. Clark outside the library. She waved them over. Good to see you both, she greeted warmly. You knew, didn't you? Elena said. Mrs. Clark's eyes twinkled. I had a feeling things would work out. The bonds of friendship are powerful. Thank you for guiding us. Lila added. Take care of each other, the librarian advised. And remember, the past need not define your future. Months passed, and life in Ravenswood resumed its normal rhythm. Elena and Lila became active members of the community, working together to restore the old clock tower as a symbol of renewal. On the day of the grand reopening, townsfolk gathered to celebrate. The tower's clock hands, once frozen, now moved steadily, marking the passage of time. As the crowd cheered, Elena looked up, her gaze lingering on the spot where Daniel had fallen all those years ago. She felt a sense of closure, knowing he was at peace. Lila joined her. Thinking about him? Always, Elena replied. But it's different now. It's like he's watching over us. Lila nodded. I feel it too. That night, as they walked home, the stars shone brightly above. The whispering shadows were no more, replaced by the gentle rustling of leaves and the soft glow of fireflies. Do you ever wonder what else is out there? Lila mused. Elena smiled. Every day. But I also know that we can face whatever comes our way, as long as we stand together. They reached a fork in the road where their paths diverged. Good night, Elena, Lila said. Good night, Lila. As they parted ways, a warm breeze swept through the trees, carrying with it a faint, familiar melody, the lullaby they used to sing as children. They both paused, turning back to share a knowing glance. Somewhere beyond the veil, Daniel smiled, content in the knowledge that his sister and best friend had found peace.